Near don't need to be. Is that all right? Good. Okay. Right. It's a pleasure for me to be here today. I'll just tell you how we met. To be quite honest, there was a meeting with men in Bradford, one of the biggest churches in Bradford, and I walked on one end of an aisle, and this fellow walked on the other end, and we sat down together. And I said to him, "Oh, my name's Kelvin. Look, it's starting quick. My name's Kelvin. What's your name?" He said, "Bill." I said, "Whereabouts are you from?" Because obviously I'm from Bradford. So he says, "Tenerife." And I went, "No, can't be right. That can't be." So basically, Alan Wright, I don't know if you know Alan, most of you know Alan Wright. He lets me stop in his villa. Alan had been telling me about Bill and Bill about me. And in 3,000 people, we sat together. You know what I mean? That's just amazing. The miracles that God does is phenomenal. So, I just want to share a scripture that I really felt God keep putting on my heart this week, and I don't even need to put it up on the thing, so you don't need to worry. It's from Matthew, and it's the words of Jesus, and it says, "When a man was walking in a field, he found a great treasure, and in his excitement, he buried it back up again, and he went home and sold everything he had to buy the field so that he would own this treasure." And I'm really today giving my testimony. I blame Carol. Carol said, I usually say I wing it, but Carol said, "Oh, I use notes." So I've got my notes here. So I won't be too long, obviously, because no, they're not. They're not my notes. Sorry about that. We have a sense of humour, don't we, boy? And so I've got my notes here. And can you bring a picture up, the first one? Right. Now, I'm not the tallest one, as you can gather. I'm the little, scruffy one there. That is a picture of me when I was a 7-year-old. My dad, I lived in this area behind. That's where we lived. This was an allotment that we were stood in. That's my older brother, by the way. And but at the age of 7, I think I was about 7 then, my dad, who was really into everything. If my dad did something, he did it 100%. He wasn't going to mess about. If he was going to have an allotment, he'd grow everything. If he was going to collect budgies and kind of he'd buy them, he'd sell them, he'd breed them. He'd just go into everything 100%. He was that kind of person, and I kind of realized that at the age of 7. My dad was a fanatic, absolute fanatic about what he did. He was a hard worker. He smoked about 80 cigarettes a day. He was a fanatic with that. So everything my dad did was fanatical. If you can bring a picture up of my dad. This is my dad. Now, this is only about maybe 6 years ago, and you can see the smile on my dad's face. He was knocked over by a dog, and he died not long after this. But I asked him a question on this particular day. I said, "Dad, what's been the most important thing in your life?" He said, "I met Jesus Christ." And sorry, I'm getting emotional now. I don't usually want to talk about my dad, but you can see the smile on his face there. So my testimony goes, really, that at the younger age, you can take that down if you want now. I'm better looking than him. My testimony goes, really, that at the age of 7, my dad went to something connected with a Billy Graham meeting. And my dad, he was a total atheist. He didn't want to know God to start with. And a friend of his took him to a meeting. And my dad met God. He found the treasure. That's what my dad did. That's why that's on you. I told you about that this morning. My dad found a treasure that was more valuable than anything else he'd ever found in his life. And so at the age of 7, my world was absolutely turned upside down. If you think it's hard coming to church once a day, we went 4 times a day. We went to morning meetings, Sunday school, night meeting, open air meeting, and then an evening meeting, so that's like 5. So I used to sit and watch my dad in a car in the middle of Bradford. I used to sit and watch him preaching out in the town centre there. My dad was the first one in the church to do that. He was just fanatical. This thing he added, one of these things. You've all seen these. Most people use phones now, but I prefer this. my dad would read and read and read and read, and he wanted to understand about this treasure that he'd found, and total fanatic in the way he did things. He turned the church upside down. A lot of their beliefs they wouldn't deal with, and so my dad was like, no, if it says it in this, we're doing it, as simple as. And he became the pastor's best friend, really. The pastor's best friend. I know we've got glitches today. These guys are working hard, getting it right. Stuart's smiling. So anyway, this hidden treasure. Now, I'll give you all a piece of paper. I don't know if you've had a look at it. Anybody had a look? Anybody worked it out yet? Oh, we got somebody. Anybody worked it out? Here we go. Somebody just shouted it out. It's actually I think it's a picture taken from an aerial from an aeroplane. But once you see it, now I've done mine. I don't know if you can own in on that, can you? No. I'm testing Stuart today. Can you own in on that? That's the way it is. And once you've discovered that, you'll be able to turn it, I don't know how many times round, but you'll always be able to see Jesus Christ in it. But take it home with you and have a look. So, that's it. This obviously causes a bit of problems. So take it home with you. Put it down now and take it home with you. But in that picture, there's something that you need to, some people might need to discover, because it's not plain. But if you search for it, you'll find it. And my dad searched and he found Jesus Christ. And he invited Jesus Christ into his life. And at the age of 7, I was encouraged to invite Jesus Christ into my life. Now, at that time, I didn't really know what that meant, but I did it through obedience. But it started to turn my life upside down, really, because all my friends were different. They all got to do different things, and I wasn't allowed to play out on a Sunday. And then we moved house. That was absolutely traumatic. As a 7-year-old, I was like a little scruffy urchin, just running around. I could stop out whatever time I want. Now I can't go out because we live near gypsies, and these gypsies were wild, absolutely wild. Thank you for bringing that up. So, just to show how scruffy I was, yes. We weren't the richest of families, but my dad decided then he was going to move to a place called Bolton Woods, which is where the little church was, and so to be like with this pastor, which absolutely turned our lives upside down. My mum wasn't happy. As kids, we weren't happy. But my dad, being a fanatic, he was going for it. He was going for God, and as simple as. And so I just honor my dad today because that's why I'm here today. My dad put some things into me that stuck with me for the rest of my life up until today. And I'm on a young man now, but they've stuck with me. And but obviously, as a young man, I'm trying to go by my notes here, Carol, and it's not working. Sorry, it just isn't working. As a young teenager, my dad, with his pastor, decided that they would join 3 churches together. And these 3 churches joined together to make the biggest church in Bradford, where me and Bill met. So for a lot of my teenage life, I was part of this big church. But I didn't really pick my Bible up. I didn't read it. I can say the books of the Bible from start to finish, they do you no good, really. You need to know the meaning of what's in this. And but I didn't read it, and I just played at being a Christian, really. Wanted to do a lot of things that my friends were doing, but I wasn't allowed to do it anyway, so... but it got to the stage when I was probably at the age of 16, and I was into my motorbikes big time, and it's a lot easier riding with one person, but these other people started to come along called girls, and it was like, okay, now's the time to discover this area, do you know what I mean, of girls, and so I met a young girl, and we started going out, and I used to have to travel past Bradford Royal Infirmary every day when I went to see her. I used to turn up a scruffy urchin again in my working clothes, my overalls, and on my motorbike. But I used to pass this hospital, and I used to say to myself, wow, I never want to end up in there. I used to see the people on the balconies recovering from operations, and I used to think, I never want to end up in there. No, it's not for me, ain't that? I'm young, fit, and healthy. No, it's not for me. And that was one of my thoughts I used to regularly get as I was going past. Anyway, so eventually, I'm trying to cut some of it short. I got married, had 2 children, and life was good. And then life started to turn a bit foul. My children were at the age of teenagers, and we went through a divorce, which absolutely rocked my boat massively. Now, the reason it rocked my boat is because I didn't have any understanding of God in here. My world was going out and earning money, and for my family, not just for myself, but for my family. I chased money. And so chasing money, one day at Christmas, 4 o'clock in the morning, going to work to get some overtime in, I ran into a flock of sheep on the road. And my bike stopped, and all I can remember, like Superman, flying through the air, and I hit the ground and put my hand inside my jacket, and I'm like, oh, boys, this is not good. That was the first time I went into BRI, Bradford Royal Infirmary. And I can remember they did a local anaesthetic and did two or three operations on it. And them local anaesthetics were fine. They used different stuff for local anaesthetics, and I'll explain later on. That was at the age of 40-year-old. And but my world had got rocked. I'd gone through a divorce. I'm in there on my own, and I'd bought myself a little house. And I went, after coming out of hospital, I went back to my house, and I was so lonely. I was like depressed, and I just didn't know what to do with myself. And so I decided that, and I'd stopped going to church. I didn't want to be around people because I'd gone through a divorce. Everybody knew me. I just didn't want to be around people that I knew. And so I went to the doctors, and I just knew there was something wrong with my shoulder. I'd got a lot of pain. And I sat down with this doctor, and she said, I know you've got pain with your shoulder, but what about your depression? And I'm like, no, I don't have depression. I don't have depression. She said, you do. You're clinically depressed. And I looked at her, and I said, and she started to offer me crystals and all that kind of thing. And somehow she knew my parents, and she knew that I was in a Christian family. And she pointed to a picture on the wall in her office, and that was the picture that she had, and that's the size of the picture. Now, she was a doctor, and she wasn't supposed to talk about the things of God. She was offering me all sorts of stuff. But she pointed to that picture on the wall, and she said, can you see what that is? And I said, yeah, it's a picture of Jesus. And these words stuck in my mind. She said, well, some people can see it, and some people can't. And she gave me a prescription. And this is probably the first time I ever heard God speak to me, real. And as I walked out the doors of the reception area, I had a prescription in this hand and this thought in the other hand. And God said to me, now you've got a choice to make in your life, what you're going to do. And I remember screwing this prescription up, and I just literally threw it on the floor. Whether somebody else got that, I don't know. But I decided to go back to church. And my parents had been saying, you need to go back to church. But I didn't want to, but I went back to church. And I started then to read my Bible because I'd got time off work. I had 8 months off work. I used to get in my car, and even with the arm in a sling, I'd drive to a park somewhere and sit and read a little Good News Bible. And this Bible started to become real. And every day I just couldn't wait to get up and get out and read my Bible. And when you start to realize the truths in here and how this can fix your life, it's quite amazing. And so that was a little part of my life. So I started going back to church again, and I met another lady when I got married to her eventually, after I can't remember how long, but that went well for a while, and I got a job working for Teen Challenge. I don't know if anybody knows what Teen Challenge is. It's a drug rehabilitation centre, and I was working in that. I'd got out of engineering, which was great, and I was loving life and loving being married. And Teen Challenge closed down eventually after 7 years, but that really got me deeper with God at that point, because I'd got to get up and talk to people like I'm doing now, but probably with only about 15 people. So. But then my marriage fell apart again, and I was living in a house on my own. But this time, there was a difference. This time, there was something in here that helped me handle it, because it's a horrible thing to go through a divorce. And so I just stuck close to God through everything I was going through. And I decided then that because I was single, I was going to go full-time in ministry. And one day I just said, right, that's it. I'm not working anymore. I'm packing my business in, and I'm going to go into full-time ministry. And I went in ministry with a guy called John Edwards, who has been here before. I'll explain a little bit about John. John was a real radical Christian, should I say, and he used to come up with some amazing ideas, but because I'd got skills in my hands, he used them. So I built 35-foot syringe in a prison cell that's going around Ireland and stuff like that, and I was really enjoying doing what I was doing, and doing a lot of stuff outside of that as well, going to find people when God had told me to go find them. I'd just literally set off and go. And it's amazing how much God turns up. When he asks you to do something, he wants obedience out of us, you know. That's all God's after, is obedience. And so I had all this stuff going on in my life. And then God said to me, I want you to stop this now. I want you to go into the motorbike world. Now, I'd been in that before, and I thought, oh, God, I'm not so sure that's like, but if you're telling me to do it, then I'll go and buy some crazy-looking motorbikes, and I'll go into the motorbike world. So I had a time in the motorbike world, probably 2 years, standing in there as a Christian, which is not an easy thing. Got my respect, just like builders down at the, what's it called, the pub, the bar you go to, yeah. And you just build up some kind of a rapport with people that you are different, but you're not out of their circle. Do you know what I mean? You live in their circle. You can be among them, but you are different. There's something about you. So I built up this like a bit of a reputation of a, they call me Mr. Christian and all sorts of stuff like they do, you know. And but one day, I was working for CAP, Christians Against Poverty. I don't know if you know them, massive organisation, a Christian organisation. And I was working in their gardens. I had 3 gardens to do in a morning, and it was a bit unusual work for me. I don't normally do gardening, but I took a non-Christian friend of mine with me, and we went like mad at these gardens. And the last garden I was in, fortunately, there was a lot of my Christian friends doing work inside. And we got to pulling these weeds up, and really tall weeds in like a mesh. And it was, I mean, we were drenched in sweat, pulling these weeds up. Next minute, my whole world went white, totally white. And I hadn't a clue what was happening. I knew I was starting to sweat. Next minute, I was sat against a wall. And starting to come round a little bit. And my friend said, are you all right? I said, no, I don't think so. I said, there's something wrong, but I will be all right in a minute. I'll get through it, you know. Well, I didn't get through it. Next minute, there's an ambulance. And they took me to Bradford Royal Infirmary. This is a journey now that I usually tell as a separate part of my life. So they took me to Bradford Royal Infirmary, which was the wrong hospital. They put me on some machines, took my bloods. After about 17 minutes, about 20 minutes, they came back and said, Mr. Stewart, you've had a heart attack. And I'm like, no, that can't be right. He said, no, you've had a heart attack. Get in that room over there. And they wired me to all the machines. And they said, you've had quite a big heart attack, and you need to stay here until something's sorted out. So I got to call my kids and my mum and dad, and they're all in here, Dad, what you been doing again? You've been working too hard, and you know what I mean, all this kind of thing. Yeah, okay, whatever. And so they kept me in Bradford Royal Infirmary until they got me an appointment down at LGI. Because in between, there were 6 of us in a room. There was a gypsy, big guy, really tough guy, and there were some old fellas and blah, blah, blah. And I'm one of 6 in this room. They're all going for angiograms. An angiogram, I don't know if it tells you, you know, where your blockages are. And so they were all, every one of them coming back, I'm having 1 stent put in. Oh, great. I'm thinking, great. I'll just need a stent. And then this doctor came in, and they didn't say anything in the angiogram, but this doctor came in and stood at my end of my bed. He said, I'm sorry, Mr. Stewart. He said, but I know you've watched all these other guys having just 1 stent put in. He said, you need a quadruple heart bypass. And I'm like, no, God, please. No. Why me? I asked, why me? Do you know what I mean? Why not these guys over here that are playing at the world and, you know. So anyway, they kept me in at Bradford Royal Infirmary until they got me an appointment down into Leeds. They must have kept me there a couple of weeks. They let me go, a hospital that lets you go home in the afternoon and come back at tea time. I'd never seen that before, but that's what they let me do. And so eventually they got me down at Leeds for at 12:30 for a quadruple heart bypass. Now I'm going to drop back a little bit, 5 years before this particular point. And when I'm talking about obedience, that I went to a guitar show. And I used to buy and sell guitars as part of my ministry, so I could pay for myself in my ministry. And but this particular day, I went to Liverpool, and which is quite a decent journey from where I am. It's about 80 miles. I went up to Liverpool, went to the guitar show. I bought nothing and sold nothing. But in the back of my guitar that particular day, I had a travel guitar, which was quite a rare guitar. And because I'd bought nothing and sold nothing, I set off back home, and I went to try and find a drug addict in a place called Widnes on the way down, and I could not find him. Now, God always turned up before, always if he sent me anywhere. So I said to God, where do you want me to go today then? Where do you want me to go? And he said, the leaflet you've got on your chair, you need to go there. I'm like, oh, okay, I forgot about that. So I set off then an opposite direction, and I went to this little motorbike meeting. I didn't want to go in, but I had to be obedient to God, so I had no biking gear on. All these guys were turning up with all the biking gear, and I'm sat right at the back, kept right out the way, and I just let the meeting go on and listen to all these testimonies. And one of the songs they were singing in that evening was How Great Thou Art. Now, sometimes we don't know somebody else's story that's going on. A couple that had turned up, he was president of part of the motorbiking world. He turned up with his wife and a friend of theirs. Now, he'd been fasting and praying for one particular guitar, and he'd just finished fasting that Sunday night. And I'd sat at the back, meeting a bit like me and Bill did. I sat right at the back, and this guy came and sat next to me. And through the meeting, I listened to his voice, and I thought, wow, you've got an amazing voice. And God said, tell him he's got an amazing voice. Now, this is a stranger. So I'm like, I turned to him. I said, you know, you've got an amazing voice. And we started talking, and they said, what do you do? I said, well, I'm in the motorbike world, and I buy and sell guitars. And next minute, his wife turned to me and she said, talk to him about guitars, will you? And I'm like, oh, that was a bit harsh. But what I didn't realize, he'd fasted and prayed for 3 days for one particular guitar. And that was the only guitar I had in the back of my van at that time, a rare guitar. It was my own personal guitar. And God said to him, go get it and give it to him. I thought, oh, God, no, that's my own personal guitar. Come on, leave me alone, you know. Anyway, so I went back to the back of my van and got this guitar, brought it in, sat him down on the floor, and he's got the earplugs in and he's playing it. And his wife said, how much do you want for it? And I just read God said to her, I told you, give it to him. So I said, nothing, it's his. If he needs it, then it's his. Now, that's such an important time. I didn't realize at the time how important that particular day was. So I'm going back now to when I've had my heart attack. So I've had my heart attack into BRI. They're shipping me down into LGI Leeds, where they do the heart operations. And so I'm laid there thinking, okay, here we go. This is going to be a biggie, but I need it doing, basically. And so I'm there at 12:30, and I didn't get a chance to tell my kids because they only booked me in and took me down late at night time. So late morning, I got to say to my kids, look, I'm in LGI, I'm in this quadruple heart bypass. Will you tell my mum and dad? But thought nothing of it because my dad had had a triple. So I thought, I can do a quad. I've got to do one more than him at least, you know what I mean, to rub it in. And so anyway, I can remember at 12:30, your trolley comes for you, which when you've got no wife and you've got no kids and anybody else to support you, it's quite a hard thing to do. And I was like thinking, I've only got you, only got you. You know, I started to learn that you have to cry out to God sometimes, and God hears your cries. And but I wasn't really frightened. I was quite happy that they were going to knock me out, and I'd wake up and get my operation done. A few days, and I'm out of here, home, and I can recover. It wasn't going to go like that. Little did I know. They took me down on the trolley. They wheeled me into the ante room, where they prep you for all your to go into the operating theatre. And I'm chatting away, Mr. Jolly, as usual, chatting to these guys, and yeah, we're going to stick a needle in you, you'll go to sleep, and blah, blah, blah. So the first injection they gave me was a thing called rocuronium. Sounds like a nightclub, doesn't it, really? But they gave me this thing called rocuronium, which is obviously to knock you out. There are some medical people here. I don't know where they are. Hand up. From this ship. Somebody here in there, anyway. So this is quite a powerful drug, but they give it to most people, and it's literally to put you out completely, and then they can get you on bypass, get the thing down your throat, get you into the operating theatre, and keep you on bypass. So my anaesthetist banged this stuff into me, and he said, and all of a sudden it killed you outright. Now, I reacted, I had anaphylactic shock, which is one of thousands and thousands of people that wouldn't have an anaphylactic shock. I'm just one of them that does. So he gave me this thing, and the report came back that later on that I'd been dead for 17 minutes. And but I didn't know that for quite a long time, so I'd gone through my operation, didn't know anything about it, and gone into intensive care, got pneumonia, absolutely horrendous time. I was pouring water over my head. Every time they filled the jug, I'd just pour it over my head because I was so warm. Apparently that's the worst thing you can do. But and I was having hallucinations. I thought the nurses were going to stab me with dirty needles because I'd been in the drug world. And so anyway, I managed to get into the second part of intensive care. Now, I was sat, eventually they sit you up. And so I can remember one day I was sat up and I was red hot. The sun was shining through the window. And I just thought, oh, I'd love to be out there, but I know I can't. I haven't got any strength to even move. And a nurse was stood right next to me, and she would never leave my side, and she was always there. And I didn't realize at that time I'd actually died at night time for another 7 minutes, or I had a heart attack and gone for another 7 minutes. So they were just expecting me to die, basically. And but they were keeping notes. Now, their report was that this man, well, to my kids, well, your dad and your son will never speak again, will never understand who you are. If he lives, he'll be in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. And so that was the report. So my family were going through it massively, and but I didn't know. I was just milling my way through life, trying to get out of hospital in a sense. But one day I was sat there, and then this nurse was taking notes, and I thought, this is weird. Why is she taking all these notes? I didn't realize now they were just taking all my obs and expecting me that I probably wasn't going to make it, or if I did, I'd be brain dead. And I can remember this morning, sitting up, and this song came into this. I need to block that. This song came into my head, and it was a Michael Jackson song. And I wasn't a Michael Jackson fan, but I know a lot of music. And these words were, "You are not alone, but I am here with you." I don't know if anybody knows that song. And it was like God was saying to me, "You're not on your own in this. Do you know what I mean? You're okay. You're all right." And I'm thinking, well, if you knew the pain I was in, I mean, I've had my leg opened up and my chest opened up, but God, I'm just glad you're with me, because I don't know I'll get through this on my own. And this nurse said to me, "Are you singing to me?" And I said, "No." I said, "I'm learning to worship God again." Now, I didn't realize how much of a shock that was to her, because she'd been told I would never talk again. And but I didn't know. I had no idea. So eventually, I got up into Ward 29, I think it was. And I decided that I couldn't breathe properly. I had a mask on all the time. I just couldn't get that air that I needed, the oxygen that I needed. And one particular night, I was laid in my bed, and there was nobody else in the room. There were 6 beds, but I was in there on my own. And the lights had all been turned out, and I'm there with this mask and steam pouring out of it and struggling like mad. And I started to lose my breath, and I thought, I'm dying. Now, at this point, I knew I was dying. I didn't know about the times before. I had no idea. Nobody told me because they didn't want to upset the way I was thinking. And so I was losing oxygen, and I said to God, I'm dying here. You'll have to help me here because I'm dying. But I had a buzzer, so I grabbed the buzzer, and I buzzed these 2 nurses, and they came in, and they said, what are you doing down there? They slid me back up in my bed, and then they walked out and said, but it'll take a couple of hours, we'll get you a doctor. And I thought, that is not good enough. So I thought, I'm going to have to do something about this. So I went to get the buzzer again, and I knocked it on the floor. Now I can't get out of bed, and I'm in a dark room on my own, as I thought I was on my own. But I've got God, and I started to talk to God, and I cried out to him. I absolutely cried out. I was in pain. I was literally losing oxygen, and to the point of where I knew I was dying. And at this point, I just remember what I would almost like say blanking out completely. And I can remember the feeling of my body my spirit leaving my body behind. And but I felt like I had a body, which is a bit unusual. But I went through a door, up like a set of stairs, through a door. Now, I'm stood still, but my body's moving that direction. And I'm looking at all these people, and they're all happy, all smiling, and it was light blue in the background. If I see light blue, it blesses me big time. These people were just sat there, but they were smiling, and all happy. There were families, there were single people. But I'm moving to my left, and all of a sudden, somebody at the height of maybe 17, 20 foot tall, he looked down at me with his left hand, and he just kept waving me on. And I went past him, and then all of a sudden, I went back down onto my bed, and I was laid there, and I cried out to God, and I said to God, what is happening? Why me? Why is this happening? And he said to me these words. He said, remember the prayer you prayed before you went down for your operation. Now, I prayed on the way down on the trolley. I said to God, I don't want to die of this. I had no idea what was going to happen. I don't want to die of this. I want to see my next grandchild born, and I want to carry on working for you. No idea what was going to happen. And so I'm crying out, and I'm literally, my eyes are full of tears. And God said to me, he said, remember this. He said, that's where I took you. He said, now go and do what you want with the rest of your life. And I'm laid there thinking, I haven't got a clue what you're talking about. Where did you take me? I didn't realize at one point God took me into a place that I would call a waiting place. I don't call it heaven. I call it a waiting place. And I saw something of heaven. But the privilege of God saying to me, go and do what you want with the rest of your life. And so later on, I got sent home. Obviously, my kids were pleased I was talking. I'd now got to learn to walk again. And I can remember looking at a lamppost one day and thought, I'm going to walk to that lamppost one of these days. And I got up one day in my pajamas and my dressing gown, and I walked to the lamppost. And then the day after, I walked to the second lamppost. And then a few days later on, I walked round the block. And today, I'm here because God gave me a second life. And He probably given me 3 opportunities to live again, but I don't know about the first 2, but I knew about this one, to be able to do what God wants me to do. And I learned about obedience and listening to God. And this treasure is something that we need to search for. The treasure of having God in your life is absolutely phenomenal. And that's what I want to really say today. I want to thank God. I want to give him honor. And I want to thank him for answering my prayer that day. I didn't want to die. I wanted to carry on in life, and he honored that prayer. And so that's my testimony. And I hope that wasn't too long.